Now, you've worked with elite teams, like the SEALs and military special operations and football teams. And what is the common thread running across all these men in these situations that you've come across the most?
Interesting. Most of the really good guys quit. And it's...
Elaborate on that. Like, I want to dive into that.
Well, if you read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth or Duxbury, whatever it is, if you've been a 9 or a 10 all your life and been told how great you are, you don't know who you are when you're not great anymore. You become a head case. When you've got scholarships and newspaper articles and been told how handsome and how specimen, the instructors know that. And they see the all-stars when they come in, in each branch. And it's their job to make sure you don't believe those press clippings anymore. So they go after you to make you even with the team. So some guys are good runners, but not swimmers. Some guys are good strength guys or this and that. Well, they want to even out the whole group of candidates.
Yes, that makes sense. Yes.
So no one is the gun. And so when those really Adonis kind of super athletes come in, they get rocked. And when they don't know what to do because they don't know who they are anymore, they quit. And the kids that have been scrappy, the B- kids who have always been competing against the straight A kids or the second string kids who have been working against the really good kids, junior high and high school, they've always never been that good, but they've never quit. They've always just stayed scrappy, They got grit inside of them. Those kids love that pressure because they've never been that good ever. And they've been used to being looked down upon or not as good as these really good kids. And so they begin to rise up because that's their arena. And the good kids say, I don't know who I am anymore. I've never been like this. And they just quit. So it's interesting to watch these classes with the mediocre kids. So when we graduated our 10 guys, we just looked at each other and said, we're the good guys. We're the guys that they could not lose when they showed up.
Yep.
And they were gone.
And you just enlightened me. I'm sitting here and I'm absorbing the words you're saying. And one of the questions in our program, in our crucible, it's always been that we have a lot of good men that come through this program and some very, very high level guys. And unfortunately, a good bunch of them fail out. They drop out. But I see now what you're saying because it makes sense where, they're operating at such high levels. People are always kind of lifting them up. They have a bunch of different, assistants and secretaries and people here and people there. And the moment that we level out everybody when we go in boots on ground, it shocks them. And they lose that sense of who they are.
They lose the confidence.
Yes.
Because they've never, ever been subjected to, you're nothing, dude. You're just one of us.
Yes. Thank you for that, because you opened my eyes here. And it's one of the things that I've been searching for a long time. Why is it? Because these are good men. They're good men. They're successful. They're driven. They have something special.
You bet.
But some of them are a day in, 2 days in, they quit.
Because they've never had to go through the grind and pull themselves up and suck it up and reinvent themselves and start over mentally and just be a teammate.
Yeah.
And they're always the head guy. They're never the teammate. And we say to them, we know that you're hot, but you're not hot everywhere all the time. And we're going to put you in places where you can't be a star. And we want to see who you become.
Yes.
And they just pull the plug on themselves after a while, like, I want to be the best or nothing.
Yes. I love that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your leadership journey with John Maxwell. Okay, you had, it's amazing how your life kind of took you from one thing to another and then weaved in. What was your experience, doing and traveling, and doing things with him and traveling?
For the listeners, I was taught early on by my coaches, be humble and ask lots of questions. Don't act like you have it together. Don't fake it till you make it. Some things you do. Some things just, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? When I got out of the military, I knew I was a leader, but I know that I didn't understand leadership the way others did. When I heard John Maxwell begin to teach on leadership, it made so much sense. 1, 2, 3, 4, you know? Oh, I would never have thought those are the steps. And he wrote 2 books, Developing the Leader Within You, and the other was Developing the Leaders Around You. And those were 2 books together. And he would say to me, read these books and talk to me about the chapters. I sought him out, like the story I told you.
Which I would love for you to tell here.
Well, I read his book, and he in one of his books says the way that he hung out with great pastors when he was pastoring was he would go on a summer vacation and he would ask out 10 pastors of the 10 largest churches in America if they would have lunch with him, and he's in his 20s. So he would offer them $100 to have lunch with some 20-year-old who wants to talk to some 60-year-old who's got mega everything. And every one of the guys took him up on it. Said, yeah, who's this spunky kid that would want to pay me $100 to have lunch? And he would then say, what would you tell a 28-year-old? What would you tell a 30-year-old and a 35-year-old? Meaning I have a ramp I need to follow, 25, 30, 35, 40. Give me the ramp that leads to success. And he did that to 10 of the largest churches in America. And he would come back at 28, 29, apply those principles. I heard that. I read it in the book. So I called his secretary and said, hey, I'll give him $100 to have lunch with me. And I guess nobody had ever done that to him. And so he took me up on it. I flew to San Diego and had lunch. And he said, why are you having lunch with me? I said, because I want to be like you. I mean, I'm a leader, but I don't think of it the way you think of it. I mean, you got a sense for breaking it down, making it really simple. And I'm building my church. I planted a church with athletes at the University of Nevada, Reno. I was building it on a leadership model. If you're not a leader, go find someplace else. I don't want you here. A leader means you're going to have responsibility. You need to take responsibility for yourself and for your stuff and blah, blah, blah. And so he liked what I was doing, and he said, well, come down. So I flew down every month for 2 years just to be with him and listen to him train his staff. And he put it on a cassette tape back then. And that cassette tape had a membership of 5,000 guys who got his monthly cassette tape on leadership. And I'm sitting there getting it when he's doing it live. And they'd say blah, 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 and I'd go home and I'd apply it. And I just followed what he and others were doing, and they said, just do this, Robert. Because I would say, what do you think? I was not your normal pastor. I was a special ops military leader. But I wasn't a leader in my field. Completely different worldview. Servant leadership, not musclehead, in your face, suck it up. We don't care if we jump out of planes or whatever you do. Leadership by servanthood. The V is upside down this way versus this way. And so he paid attention and began to take me around the nation and around the world with him. And he would say, why don't you teach this morning thing? And I'll sit and listen. Why don't you teach this after a while? Blah, blah, blah. So I let the humility of, I know I need help. And if I ask the right questions, this guy will be nice to me. And I'll learn something.
Yep.
And so that was 15 years of just following him around the world. And he would just say, did you apply that? We'd be at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco and having lunch or something. Between meetings of something, he'd say, did you ever apply that? Would you go back and do that, what I told you? And I said, yeah. What happened? It worked. And these other things happened too. And he would just mentor me and ask me questions. So to the listener out there, if you see a guy that's got stuff that you want, you need to show the humility, go say, where did you get that? How did you get that? Do you mind if I ask? And he won't think any less of you.
Right.
He'll know that you're teachable. And most guys don't want to let people know that they don't know everything. And they're afraid that they're going to be humiliated or embarrassed by talking to some gun about something. No, stand in line and say, I'm embarrassed to talk to you. I'm afraid what you're going to think of me. say it out loud. But I want to know where you got that truth, where you got that insight with kids or finances or whatever it is. And I found that everyone that I asked, they always were happy to talk to me. But I was scared to death to go make the ask or to show up and come to that meeting and,
Wow.
all that stuff.
So proximity was very big for
Huge.
you. Yeah.
That's the term that we use today. Back then we didn't have a term. We just said,
Right.
go.
Go.
Just go make yourself available.
Shake hands.
Shake hands.
Eye to eye. Wow.
Just
That's
go.
Powerful. And that's a learning lesson right there, because most men in this world that we live in, they don't get that.
Right.
Everything, it's Zoom and, text messages. Let's do this the right way. Email, Zoom, and text messages, that's not a connect. You come out here, you're on the podcast face to face, you're shaking hands, eye to eye, going here, going there, and you're physically there. That's a huge difference. I wish that men listening to this could understand. That is a huge difference between the other methods of communication.
That there's these things online now where you can go for proximity and hang out with the big guns for $3,000 or $4,000 to a master class
Yes.
or mastermind.
Yes.
It just feels like they have prophetized what we used to do just because there was relationship.
Right.
I could walk up and talk to some guy. Now I got to pay $3,000 to go see the guy, and he won't even talk to me unless I get the VIP through the back thing. And
Yes.
it's sad because there's a lot of really good men and women that just don't have the ability to get on the plane and go somewhere and pay that kind of money.
Yes.
In the old day, you would just show up someplace and they would talk to you and they would have lunch with you between sessions or this or that. And it was much simpler back then versus
I agree.
proximity with the big guns. And will you please talk to me, please? Oh, I got to talk to somebody. What'd you get? Well, he talked to me.
Yeah.
Versus an in-depth lunch or something.
Without a doubt. How important have mentors been in your life?
They've made me who I am, and they've been there for me when I didn't know what to do on lots of things. And I had a cadre of different ones. Like I had a mentor for marriage. I had a mentor for raising kids. I had a mentor for making money. And once I learned there were coaches out there, we didn't call them, coaches, we called them mentors. Mm-hmm. Once I found out these guys they just sneezed and something good happened. And it didn't work for me like that. So I just went and said, I have problems with my marriage. I'm having problems with my kids. I'm having problems with my staff. I'm having problems with the mayor of the town. Go out, do that, make yourself available, you learn your stuff. And sometimes it's better than others, but you just have to make yourself available and walk in humility and say, I'm just looking for some advice.
So give us a glimpse of how you would get all these mentors. Like, how would you connect with them? I know you mentioned you're humble, but would you meet them in church? Would you meet them in, restaurant,
everywhere.
a bookstore?
I joined the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
And there were real business guys there.
Yeah, back then, Chamber of Commerce, by the way, it's different than what it is now.
Right.
Yeah.
All the city leaders would get together to talk about the city.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Or Rotary back then.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, Rotary, you could only have 2 of one profession in every Rotary club.
Yep.
Only 2 doctors, 2 lawyers, 2 psychiatrists, 2 professors. You join that, and these guys get up to speak, and you can sit in those tables, and you just get to know guys and ask them questions. You just have to make yourself available where leaders are. Go be where those leaders are and listen before you speak, and then finally ask the questions. And I just found places where leaders were and who could help me understand what I don't know.
Sure.
When I'm on I have a church with 2 campuses, 6 services a weekend. I'm cooked. And so I went to a black church on Sunday night because the guy was a real leader. And I just sit in the back and say, I'm just spaced out. What are you doing here? You white guy, what are you doing here? Church of God in Christ. All the music and everything. And I just say, I just need to space out and, listen to you, watch you. And he would then say, anything you want to work on? I said, yeah, I got a staff member, blah, blah. And he would just talk to me, and give me his culture, his background, his different thing. And I just went places where there were people that were smarter than me all the time.
Yeah, I love that.